Peter Gabriel spent decades crafting some of the most innovative music in rock history.
Once the flame begin to catch, the wind will...
But his artistic vision often put him on a collision course with fellow musicians who couldn't match his creative ambitions.
It sort of started the story rolling, and then a few other things were thrown in. Yeah, his apartment was burning down at the time.
The man behind Sledgehammer and In Your Eyes built his reputation as a musical pioneer. Yet this same drive for perfection created bitter divisions with collaborators who found themselves pushed aside. While fans celebrated his theatrical Genesis performances and groundbreaking solo albums, Gabriel was quietly burning bridges with artists who dared to challenge his artistic control.
I think is that you get a good bunch of musicians together and interesting things will happen.
From explosive backstage arguments to calculated career sabotage, his pursuit of musical excellence left a trail of damaged relationships across the industry. These weren't minor creative differences or temporary disagreements. We're talking about long-standing professional wars that split bands, destroyed friendships, and created lasting resentment throughout the progressive rock community. You'll be amazed to learn which former bandmate he accused of selling out their legacy for commercial success during a heated confrontation, or discover how his experimental approach sparked a decade-long Cold War with a fellow art rock icon who felt Gabriel was stealing his innovative thunder. Get ready to explore the darker side of Peter Gabriel's musical journey, where artistic integrity meets ego and creative collaboration turns into cutthroat competition. 6. Tony Banks. Kicking off our countdown at number 6 is Peter Gabriel's clash with Genesis keyboardist Tony Banks. A creative battle that helped tear apart one of progressive rock's most ambitious bands.
Although we'd had good gigs in other places, that was really the first place that adopted us.
The conflict centered around musical control and artistic direction during Genesis's early experimental years. Tony dominated the band's sound with his classical piano training and complex synthesizer arrangements, but Peter wanted equal creative space for his theatrical concepts and unconventional song structures. According to former Genesis roadies, recording sessions became tense affairs, where both men fought over studio time and arrangement decisions. Peter allegedly grew frustrated with Tony's academic approach to songwriting, feeling it limited the band's emotional range and theatrical possibilities. Tony reportedly dismissed Peter's costume ideas and storytelling elements as distracting gimmicks that overshadowed the music. The breaking point came during the recording of The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway in 1974. Multiple band insiders claim Peter wanted more atmospheric keyboards to support his narrative concept, while Tony insisted on maintaining his intricate musical passages. Studio engineers remember heated exchanges where Peter accused Tony of prioritizing technical showmanship over serving the songs. Their artistic incompatibility became obvious when Peter started developing solo material that featured minimal keyboard parts. Tony allegedly told other band members that Peter was becoming impossible to work with and was holding back Genesis's musical evolution. This keyboard conflict played a major role in Peter's eventual decision to leave the band permanently. 5. Mike Rutherford. At number 5, we dive into Peter Gabriel's bitter dispute with Genesis guitarist Mike Rutherford. A conflict that created permanent divisions over creative ownership and musical direction. The trouble began when Mike started asserting more control over Genesis's guitar-driven material while Peter was developing his conceptual album ideas. Both musicians had strong opinions about the band's future sound, but their visions were pulling in completely opposite directions.
Just this week, I've been working with this guitarist called Leo Nosantelli, but he was the guitar.
According to music industry sources, Peter felt Mike was trying to steer Genesis toward mainstream rock radio instead of supporting the experimental theatrical approach that made them unique. Mike reportedly complained that Peter's elaborate stage concepts were overshadowing the actual musicianship and making the band look like a circus act rather than serious musicians. The songwriting credit battles became particularly nasty during the mid-1970s. Former band associates claim Peter accused Mike of taking unfair publishing percentages on songs where Peter contributed most of the lyrical and conceptual work. Mike allegedly fired back that Peter's theatrical additions didn't qualify as real songwriting contributions. Their relationship reached its lowest point when Mike formed Mike and the Mechanics after Genesis achieved commercial success with Phil Collins. Peter reportedly saw this as proof that Mike had always prioritized commercial appeal over artistic integrity. Industry insiders remember Peter making cutting remarks about Mike's formulaic pop sensibilities during interviews throughout the 1980s. The two men barely spoke at Genesis's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, maintaining their decades-long professional coldness. 4. Record label executives. Coming in at number 4 is Peter Gabriel's ongoing battle with various record company executives who tried to control his artistic output and commercial direction throughout his career. The conflict started during Genesis's later years when Atlantic Records pressured the band to create more radio-friendly material. Peter allegedly clashed repeatedly with A&R representatives who wanted him to tone down his theatrical performances and focus on conventional song structures that would appeal to American audiences. Things got worse when Peter launched his solo career and insisted on maintaining complete creative control over his recordings. Former Charisma Records staff remember explosive meetings where Peter refused to compromise his artistic vision for commercial considerations. He allegedly told one executive that he would rather quit making music than create a sanitized corporate product designed by committee. The situation reached crisis levels during negotiations for his world music projects in the 1980s. Record company bosses couldn't understand why Peter wanted to incorporate African and Middle Eastern musicians into his albums, arguing that Western audiences wouldn't connect with such experimental sounds. According to industry veterans, Peter became notorious for walking out of label meetings and threatening to break contracts rather than accept creative interference. He reportedly told one major label president that corporate executives were destroying musical innovation and had no understanding of artistic development. These business battles cost Peter several lucrative deals and delayed multiple album releases, but he maintained his reputation as an uncompromising artist who refused to bow to commercial pressure from industry bureaucrats. 3. Phil Collins. At number 3, we uncover the most documented tension in Peter Gabriel's career. His complicated relationship with Phil Collins.
At their instrument before they played a note. And that was definitely the case with Phil. He had a confidence about him.
The drummer who replaced him as Genesis's frontman. The problem started immediately after Peter left Genesis in 1975. While Peter expected the band to eventually dissolve without his creative leadership, Phil stepped up as lead vocalist and transformed Genesis into a commercial powerhouse that achieved far greater mainstream success than Peter ever had. According to former Genesis management, Peter felt personally betrayed when Phil's pop-oriented approach brought the band massive radio hits and arena tours. Peter had spent years building Genesis's reputation as an innovative art rock collective, only to watch Phil turn it into what Peter allegedly called background music for shopping malls. The rivalry intensified throughout the 1980s when both men were competing for similar audiences. Music journalists remember the subtle tension at industry events where Peter and Phil would deliberately avoid each other or make diplomatic but pointed comments about different approaches to musical integrity. Former record company executives claim Peter was particularly bitter about Phil's simultaneous success with Genesis and his solo career. Peter reportedly told associates that Phil was double-dipping and spreading himself too thin to create meaningful artistic work in either context. The situation reached peak awkwardness during Genesis's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony, where both men had to share the stage despite years of professional coldness. Their brief interaction was polite but clearly strained, confirming decades of unresolved creative differences. 2. Sting. Taking the number 2 spot is Peter Gabriel's fierce competition with Sting. A rivalry that divided the art rock community and created lasting professional animosity. Both musicians were exploring similar territory in the 1980s, incorporating world music elements, addressing social issues, and positioning themselves as intellectually serious artists rather than mere pop entertainers.
20 minutes, and then we'll come together again, and then I'll do a set, or Peter will do a set. So maybe there's 4 segments joined together by the 2 of us.
This overlap created direct competition that neither man appreciated. According to music industry insiders, Peter felt that Sting was copying his approach to global musical collaboration without understanding the cultural significance behind it. Peter had spent years developing relationships with African and Latin American musicians, only to watch Sting achieve mainstream success with his own world music experiments. The conflict escalated when both artists were competing for the same international musicians and producers. Former studio managers remember booking conflicts where Peter's team would specifically request sessions when they knew Sting was also trying to reserve time with particular world music specialists. Peter allegedly accused Sting of musical tourism during a private conversation at a charity event, suggesting that Sting was exploiting world music traditions for commercial gain rather than genuine artistic exploration. Sting reportedly responded by questioning Peter's commercial motivations and suggesting that his world music phase was just another theatrical gimmick. Their mutual dislike became obvious when neither would agree to participate in collaborative projects or tribute albums that featured the other artist. Event organizers learned to book them for separate nights to avoid backstage confrontations that could overshadow the actual performances. 1. David Bowie. Taking our top spot is Peter Gabriel's ultimate artistic rivalry. His decades-long creative war with David Bowie. This wasn't just professional competition, it was a battle for the soul of experimental rock music. The conflict began in the early 1970s when both artists were pioneering theatrical rock performances with elaborate costumes and conceptual album narratives. Peter felt that Bowie was receiving more critical attention for innovations that Genesis had been developing simultaneously, creating resentment that lasted for decades. According to former Bowie collaborators, Peter became obsessed with proving his artistic superiority over the Thin White Duke. When Bowie moved to Berlin for his experimental trilogy, Peter allegedly told associates that Bowie was following trends instead of setting them, and lacked authentic creative vision. The rivalry reached its peak during the 1980s, when both artists were exploring electronic music and multimedia presentations.
Relationship with other people's songs, so you can think of him.
Music industry veterans remember Peter actively competing with Bowie for the same cutting-edge producers, video directors, and visual artists who could enhance their increasingly sophisticated artistic concepts. Former studio engineers claim that Peter would monitor Bowie's recording schedules and deliberately book sessions with similar musicians immediately afterward, attempting to poach collaborators and stay ahead of Bowie's creative development. The ultimate insult came when Peter allegedly dismissed Bowie's commercial success as style over substance during a rare, unguarded interview moment. Their Cold War continued until Bowie's death, with both artists maintaining polite public facades while privately competing for recognition as rock's premier artistic innovator. Peter Gabriel's relentless pursuit of artistic innovation created unexpected enemies throughout his legendary career. These conflicts reveal how creative perfectionism can destroy professional relationships and split musical communities. Was Peter defending true artistry, or just being impossible to work with? Share your thoughts, hit that like button, and subscribe for more musical mysteries.